to similar myths in ancient Phoenicia and elsewhere. In the Hittite theogony, the relative sovereignty of the gods was determined by war between them, as Eliade states. The initial episode, Kingship in Heaven, explains the succession of the first gods. In the beginning, Allelu was king, and Anu, the most important of the gods, bowed before him and served him. But after 9 years, Anu attacked and vanquished him. Then Allalu took refuge in the subterranean world, and Kumarbi became the new sovereign servant. 9 years passed, and Kumarbi in his turn attacked Anu. The latter fled, flying into the sky, but Kumarbi pursued him, caught him by the feet, and threw him to the ground after biting his loins. Since he was laughing and rejoicing over his exploit, Anu told him that he had been impregnated. Kumarbi spat out what was still in his mouth, but a part of Anu's virility entered his body, and he became big with 3 gods. The rest of the text is badly mutilated, but it is presumed that Anu's children, with Teshub, the storm god, leading them, make war on Kumarbi and dethrone him. Eliade continues, drawing upon Philo of Byblos' archaic Phoenician history. The first sovereign Phoenician god was Elyon, in Greek Hypistos, the Most High, corresponding in the Hurrian/Hittite mythology to Allalu. From his union with Ruth, there came into the world Uranus, corresponding to Anu, and Gaia. In their turn, these two engendered 4 sons, the first of whom, El, or Kronos, corresponds to Kumarbi. As the result of a quarrel with his wife, Uranus tries to destroy his progeny, but El forges a saw or lance for himself, drives out his father, and becomes the sovereign. Finally, Baal, representing the 4th generation corresponding to Teshub and Zeus, obtains the sovereignty. Exceptionally, he obtains it without combat. It is important to emphasize at once the specialized and at the same time syncretistic character of this myth, and not only in its Hurrian/Hittite version, in which, besides, there are a number of Sumero-Akkadian elements. The Enuma Elish likewise presents 1. A series of divine generations, 2. The battle of the young gods against the old gods, and 3. The victory of Marduk, who thus assumes the sovereignty. To sum up, all the myths that recount the conflicts between successive generations of gods for the conquest of universal sovereignty justify, on the one hand, the exalted position of the last conquering god, and, on the other hand, explain the present structure of the world and the actual condition of humanity. The gods are transpersonal forces, instinctive and socially modified, comprising universal elements of human experience. The organization of these gods, as a consequence of combat, is an abstracted and poetic description of the manner in which emergent behavioral patterns and interpretive schemas, moral positions, so to speak, fight for predominance and therefore organize themselves over the course of time. The manner in which a given society has come to organize its behavioral hierarchies is implicit in its mode of attributing to or perceiving value in objects, which is to say, implicit in its mode of restricting the meaning manifested by objects to an acceptable range and magnitude. The brutally organized consequence of the battle of the gods constitutes the tradition that structures the intrapsychic hierarchy of values, regulates interpersonal interaction, and keeps individual emotion in check, as the consequences of individual and social behavior, when guided by tradition, remain predictable. A given behavior manifested in the absence of another being does not necessarily produce the same outcome when it plays itself out in the presence of others. 2 children and 1 toy is not the same situation as 1 child and 1 toy, because in a sense the toy is not the same, not from the phenomenological perspective. The behavioral tendencies of individuals undergo constant modification in the social situation because the fact of the society in the situation changes the motivational relevance of all the objects in the situation. two children with one toy have to come to an agreement, which is mutual modification of behavior, before the toy can be what it is when encountered alone, which is fun rather than trouble. The behavioral tendencies of individuals are mimicked action patterns, which were originally established as a consequence of heroic behavior. The mutual interplay of action patterns in the social world, however, results in their inevitable modification. Patterns of behavior, those motivated by aggression, for example, or love or fear, have a transpersonal basis, which accounts in part for their personification as gods.